Hello.
Hello, how are you? Can
I'm
you see me?
no, just a picture now.
Ah,
You're up, I think.
there you go.
There you are. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
How has your day been so far?
Very good, very good. I had a great day. I've been working, working, doing exercise, and living the life.
Yeah, I'm sure you have prepared for that meeting in a certain sense, probably taken a deep breath or something, but we can
Ab-
talk about that later.
yes, absolutely. We have done that.
Yeah, let me maybe first give brief introduction about you. So, a very warm welcome to this episode of Many First Conversations, where we talk about first time and other life experiences that have taught us something or have enriched our lives in a specific way. I'm really happy and honored to have you here on the call today. You're an opera singer. You're one of the most successful and best tenors in the world at the moment. You have been on stage for, I think, over 25 years and well over 1,000 times, and many times in title roles, like, for example, Othello, and also multiple times. So I think it was over 100 times, for example, for Othello and so on. And all of that in the most renowned opera houses around the globe, from the Americas across Europe to Asia. So really an impressive career. And there's more. You are also a transformational teacher. And some years ago, I mean, let's not go into how many years ago, but let's say when you were younger, you were on the national team for basketball, so the youth national team for basketball in Mexico. That's also where you grew up and where you started a business also back then. So you ran a construction company. You were in that sense also an entrepreneur. And then at some point, yeah, life took you to Europe. You have been in the UK now, in London, for what I believe is probably more than half of your life. And you're married and you have a daughter. And yeah, again, a very warm welcome. It's great to have you. And I'm ready to dive into your world and your work. Are you ready as well?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Very nice. So I would like to go into what I mentioned before, right? Like preparing, connecting, breathing. But let's maybe as a first step, zoom out a bit and go back to the time that in the end brought you for a first time to an opera stage. So how did you end up there? And I'm aware that might be triggering quite some stories and just probably some key points that brought you there. That would be nice to hear.
Well, if I understood well the question, the first time I went into the stage singing as a singer.
Or what got you there, so that in the end,
How?
I was trying to mention the first time because this is about first times.
Yes, of
So in
course.
the end, one day you were on stage as an opera singer for the first time, but there was a journey behind, right? So what got you there? What key happenings in your life? Was it always your plan, or what happened to get you there?
Well, it's a very interesting story, and just a little clarification with the success and what success means. And if I am one of the most successful singers, I am successful in a sense that I have worked in an industry that is very difficult to actually make a living out of it. So I had made a good living out of it, and I am constantly employed. So that in my book make me successful because I work with the people that I want and really enjoy my life. And I had the fortune of being constantly on the employed of people, at the same time allowing me to do my teaching and my coaching and all my weird lifestyle. So from that point of view, I consider myself a success. So that's a good thing. Now, going back to beginnings, I think the bug of being a singer and being a teacher has been in me since childhood. I always like entertaining people, and I always find it difficult to express myself through normal means. So for me to express myself through song, for example, or through music came natural, uh, actually as a need to express myself. I always find that whenever I wanted to say something, there was far more. And if I say everything that I wanted to say, it will come like a telenovela, you know, extremely dramatic. So opera suit me very well. Going back to the beginnings, I can, I think it's a very nice topic regarding beginnings. I like to talk a little bit about intuition and what made me, or what steered me into this direction. As you well mentioned, I used to play basketball to a high level in a youth environment, you know. So I managed to make national team, and I'm quite tall for a Mexican. So I had an accident. When I was quite young, and without going into the whole drama of the story, I had an accident, and I had to find another way to express myself, because I just didn't recover my jump. So as I love singing, the thing that I did, I was studying civil engineering at the moment. The thing that I did is, okay, and I have all this energy and I need to focus it on something. So I went to have lessons in the local school, music school. And a tenor who was giving singing lessons heard me singing in the corridors, said, come and have a lesson with me and see what happened. And within 10 seconds said, oh, you are a tenor, so we must educate your voice. And that, to me, more than you are great and you're fantastic, just the fact that they said you are a tenor and you can work towards something, ignited something on me. And it was a sense of passion that has not decreased with the years. So although intellectually I knew that it was a very hard and difficult road, I decided to embark myself. So I said, well, what do I need to work on this? And also with a sense of fun. I said, well, you need to have singing lessons, you need to have music lessons. I said, okay. At that time, as I said, I was studying engineering and I had a little company. I think call it construction company is glorifying it a little bit too much. I had a few contracts and a few people that work with me, for me. And we're going to places and build things and make a little bit of money out of it. So that happened while I was a student. And at the same time, on my spare time, I will have my singing lessons. And I joined an opera company in Monterrey, close to the town that I was born. And that's kind of how it started, in a playful way. I never thought to make a living out of it. It was, I actually never think of making a living. I enjoy things that join my path and make it richer and richer in a way of experience. Mm-hmm. And I am convinced that brings economic fluidity with that. If you are passionate enough to dedicate your energy and your life to it. So I started doing the singing. I felt in some point, again, talking about first times and talking about intuition. I went to study with a private teacher when I graduated. So when I graduated, I decided out of the blue, I said, well, okay, I'm far too young to decide my life. I was about 23 or 22, 23. So I said, I will give myself a little bit, a year to see if this singing thing works. So I went to another city to study privately with a singing teacher. I closed the company and I went to the other city and I was working in whatever I could find, having private lessons. And one singer, Mexican singer who was working in Germany at the time, said, oh, I'm interested in your voice and I think I can help you develop it. And within 10 seconds, again, I said, well, I want to do this. And I decided to go to Germany there and then. So the next 3 months, I worked very hard to find some funding to manage to make my way to Germany and to pay for lessons. And all I managed to raise, it was enough money for a one-way ticket. That was 95, I think, 95, 96, around 95, 97, for a one-way ticket and $50 on my pocket.
Whoa.
So that didn't go well. But the intuition was there, and all the enthusiasm and me wanting to do that. And I always believe that if I had the intuition and that search of wanting to do something, it will sort itself out. And it did eventually. Not to say that it was easy, it was very difficult, but it was equally enjoyable.
So the process, right? What I hear is also some patience. You needed a bit of patience, right? I mean, it was, as you said, hard. So to kind of go through that phase, but
yes.
then when you zoom out and see the big picture, it worked out. That's what you say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospective, it's beautiful to see. And you mentioned patience. I don't think I had much patience around that time. I wanted to work then and there and fast and become very proficient on my art form very soon. So many times I felt, okay, I reached a peak and now I'm really good, only to discover 3 months later that I'm not actually that good and there is so much more work to do. And then you start another cycle and another cycle. And yeah, that's my beginnings of singing.
That's very interesting what you're saying with these cycles. And because I was about to ask, as you said, I mean, and it's very clearly visible to me. And also I feel I can sense it from you, this passion and the energy and for it, right? So after these many years, you haven't lost anything of it, it seems. But if I imagine, I hear like over 100 times you sang Othello, for example. So isn't routine kicking in at some point? Is there really always something new that keeps you that passionate, or do you find passion in routine? How is that for you?
Well, that is a very good question, and it sort of merged into the other facet of my life as a transformational teacher and what I do, and my philosophy of life. If it becomes routine and sort of boring, I don't do it. I need to feel the passion. Now, passion is a tricky word because if you wait to be passionate, you never do anything. So you have to inflict passion. You have to create your own passion. I believe that you create energy. We are people that we conduct energy through ourselves and can create and generate. That's the word. We can generate passion and we can generate inspiration and be vessels for it. For example, I mean, apart from talking about my career and success in theaters and that's a lot of a strategy that went on the way. That's completely another facet. Just talking about the art form of singing, and it goes to teaching also, and deep into breathing, which is my passion also, to all the breathing systems. In this room where you are, I have my piano here. And for example, a role that I prepared, Tannhäuser. I debuted Tannhäuser about 7 years ago. I think it was 7-8 years ago. And I was booked. I received the contract 2 years before, and it took me about 2 years to prepare it. So there was a lot of investigative work, a lot of phonetic work, because although I speak German, it's a very special kind of German. Wagner German is he created the word structure in a very specific way. To sing, you need to develop certain kind of phonetic style, phonetic diction, so you can enunciate very well what you say. But at the same time, you need to practice it enough that when somebody hears it, it doesn't sound over enunciated. So that's a training in itself. Musically is another training, and intellectually is another training. The memory side of it is another. So I build up something like a training routine, and that training routine always, as I record my improvements, I could feel and see. I could see the register and see, okay, I'm better at this now than I was last week. So that creates more enthusiasm and more desire to do it, because it's a lot of work that goes into the preparation that is done alone. So when I work, for example, with a student, it goes to the same thing. We start and we start with the breathing and how the breathing can affect your mood and how the mood can create a habit. And so that creates a scale of things. And I believe that with that discipline, you can create many things. But if you are doing something just because you said, oh, I'm good at it, by the third day, you're bored of it, or you start becoming indulgent, and the passion for it goes. And when you are talking about communication, which is into singing, into acting, into teaching, into being a politician.
Yeah, basically, communicate.
Yeah, communication, 99, that's an exaggeration, let's say 90% of it is the energy that it carries what you are saying, so it's the message or the way that you portray the words that you are implying. So you can make just sounds and be enthusiastic, and people will feel enthusiastic too.
Makes a lot of sense. So basically what you're saying, and we all know that somehow, right? That communication is not just the words, there's something else on a different level that happens. And music, I think, is a very good example there, because I think also that is something that we know, that music can touch us in a way that if it's music that it's sung, so music with words, right? We still feel it in different parts maybe of the body. It touches us emotionally. And I believe you, as an opera singer, you are someone who can create these emotions in an audience, right, through your voice. But then my question to you is, I mean, how much then for you, how much of it is really physical, as I think what you have been describing also is very much the physical training, so the vocal cords, the pronunciation, but then emotionally and maybe also mentally, I would believe, if you go on stage in front of thousands of people, I mean, what are the emotional and mental aspects maybe of this whole work, if I call it work? I wanted to say job.
Yeah. No, yes, his work is a job, but I could make an analogy. For example, if you ever have the fortune of meeting a car racer, how do you call it? Car racer, especially the Formula Ones, the one that go up to high speed. The amount of strength that they use is quite amazing. But if you talk to them, it's strength plus the balance of the strength. Or an archer, there is a lot of strength into the tensing, but also there is an act of balance as to when you release the cord.
Yeah.
To sing, to use your voice to sing, to use your voice to communicate. And if we bring it to public, to people in general, to use your presence to convey a message, yes, you do need physical strength, you need to be healthy, but more than that, you need the emotional and physical balance to be able to convey that message. So there is a coherence within you that transmit. If you transmit that coherence, the other people will feel it, and then will be more prepared to hear. In the particular case of an opera singer, for example, we are trained to reverberate. So literally, physically, we make our bone structure vibrate into a certain frequency. And what you hear with your ear, you also feel in your body. You feel the percussion, you feel that reverberation passing. Now that reverberation, the example is like a bell, for example. When you ring a bell, if you put a blanket on top of the bell, you just hear boom, and it finished. But if you don't put the blanket and let it vibrate by itself, the sound just carries and carries, and you not only hear it, but you feel it.
Yeah.
which is very interesting because in Italian, for example, the word for the word for hear, to hear, of the verb to hear, is sentire. Is to feel. You know, that will be the literal word by word translation of it. So if I am singing for 500 people or 5,000 people, let's say half of it, 2,500 people in an auditorium, I have to have the training to have a sense of balance, that my breathing is deep enough and coherent enough that allows my muscle structure not to dampen my bone structure, so it can vibrate altogether. Yeah. So if for some reason I allowed my emotion to tighten my voice like that, that sound doesn't carry it. I mean, it may carry with a microphone now, which that's another conversation. But that sound doesn't really carry and doesn't portray the right emotion. But if you allow yourself to be calm while at the same time portraying the emotion, that gets to the people like massive. If you forget about opera singers, if you listen to pastors, evangelists, the old American evangelist pastors, and the way that they almost sing when they are preaching, the great speeches, Martin Luther King, you know, and if you switch something and you say, I'm not listening to words, you're just kind of, and it's almost a continuous wave, an avalanche of feeling and sound that gets to you, even though you may not understand the words.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It is so true. And I imagine that, I mean, to have that skill and that power almost, I would say, do you use that also in daily life, like consciously? Is it
absolutely? I live by that because I'm a freelancer. As I told you before, I'm lucky enough to have been able to make a living, and I'm lucky enough to have people that listen to me and that are willing to learn from me. So as I do that, and I don't belong to an institution, I have to be passionate, because that's what I am. That's my gift to the world, the passion that I emanate, and the inspiration that I emanate with the techniques that I try to master and that I try to convey. So if you are my friend and you're having problems, and I said, well, it's 7 o'clock, bye-bye, it wouldn't be me. You know?
Yeah.
So I will share and I will try to sort it. Probably we will work it out, probably not, but you will get a huge amount of energy from me, because that's the way that I live, and that's the way that I sing, that's the way that I teach, and this life choice. Now, you could argue that nobody can sustain it, and I can tell you that you can.
Yeah, that would be my question. So in your teaching, when, let's say, your clients or the people you work with get your energy, do you also teach them how to sustain it? Is that
absolutely, absolutely, and as I teach from a positive point of view, from the realm, I call it the realm of possibilities. I truly believe that in whatever level you are, if you manage to calm your brain enough that it stops attacking you, you can create or see certain solutions. Even if the solution is just to trust your doctor, that's a solution too, you know. But if you part from that point of view, you are parting from a positive and you go upwards, and you can always go back to that point. You know, you can always activate, and there are certain breathing exercises, and there are mental exercises that you can do, and mental strategies, and it goes into a whole lot of it goes into what a session is, but I believe that that energy, we are generators of energy. Is not something that we store and we deplete. You can at any time generate more and more and more and more, and the sky is the limit. That's a choice, and that's something that I think almost anyone can do.
It's very interesting what you're saying, because so many people, and I include myself at times, right, are afraid of either speaking or singing or both. And maybe it's not necessarily just afraid, but don't really believe. I know so many people that say they can't sing. So that sounds to me a bit like as if we're holding back on some energy that we would otherwise have.
Yeah, I mean, let's say one with singing, one with speaking. Let's say the singing, they say that I can sing. What they really mean is I cannot sing in public.
Yeah.
And what they really mean is I'm ashamed of speaking in public. And what they really, really mean is that in some point of their life, somebody told them that their voice was ugly, so they don't dare do it because they are afraid to be criticized,
Yeah.
And then we go into a whole psychological entity. But if you say, okay, you're gonna sing, here is safe. You're just gonna do 3 notes. They do it. Now they said, now well, let's put a little bit of feeling on those 3 notes. And then let's put a little bit, not put a word, I love you. And that's it. And that's singing. Now, transmitting it, there is then we go into another realm of things. So if you said, now we're going to do it in public, you have to address why they don't know, why they don't do it on public. And it's not an easy process. But however, there is a process. There is something that can be do about if you really want to do it. Now, speaking in public is the same. Unless you have an affliction, a physical affliction, and you are able to speak to someone, you are speaking in public. You communicate. You affect someone, even if it's your teacher in the primary school that said, Pepito, and you say, I'm here. That's a communication in itself.
Yeah.
And then you go into the reasons why they don't do it. And what about if we change that reason and you say it? And now we analyze the message that you want to convey. How do you want to convey it? What do you want to tell your boss, and why you don't say it? And how you can say it that affects, but how you can say it that you are truthful to yourself, that you feel that support. If you don't feel the support, let's do a breathing exercise that can get your body to work even though you are a little bit nervous. So then you register a feeling that even though you are a bit nervous, you can calm your body enough that you can speak. And then you try, you see that there is no formula, but there is always a path. That's what I believe.
That's very interesting and powerful. And I believe much of it is probably also in what you would do right before going on stage. Maybe some people still feel nerves, and so you need to be able to calm yourself and to trust this strength, or what you mentioned with the Formula One racers, that you are in a moment of where you need to be able to deliver at a high level, like peak performance, but at the same time also have this calm in you. Or so that's a very interesting, and I believe such a powerful state to be in and to get into. And I asked you in the beginning if you prepared in a specific way for this conversation, because I think you also mentioned now, if you want to really open up and have conversations that you may be afraid of at some point, it's about intention also, right? And
Absolutely.
I know you as someone that's really using intention a lot. So question about this one. Did you set an intention for this conversation?
Well, the intention was to trust you. To trust you that you are an amazing host and you will guide me through whatever it needed to be said. You know my career, know me enough as to take a decision how to steer me. And my decision was to trust you, to bring good energy, and to portray myself as I am. You know, after I finish with you, I think I have an hour and a half free, and I'm gonna go to the garden to tidy up a little bit. I'm gonna cut the grass and then come back, and I will do it with the same energy, you know. And I talk to the grass, and I ask the grass how do I want to, how it wants to be done, and I do it. Of course, I don't ask loudly, but you know it's a way of life, and it fills me with enthusiasm. And obviously, we all doubt because we are mortals and we we live in this earth. But again, that's a choice. You can choose to live in hope, or you can choose to be despair. And even when you have despair, you can choose the opposite, or you can try to choose it. And just trying to choose it, it puts you a little bit up into the scale of love.
Yeah, and as we talked about trust, right? You mentioned it so beautifully. Trust yourself that you can get up again if you're once a bit down.
Yes, absolutely.
Totally human. But that's an interesting point that you're mentioning. I wanted to touch upon that a bit. Has there ever been something, you know, a first time when there was a mishap or something, or when I could imagine as a singer, if you lose your voice, you know, suddenly, I mean, has any of that happened ever?
I can tell you a beautiful experience that I always refer when in doubt. Because obviously not all the shows are success. You know, there are sometimes that you mess up so massively that you wish you have never started. You know, but the next day you stand up and go on. But one time, one of the biggest regrets, yeah, it is a regret of my life, is that I could not attend my dad's funeral, and that hit me very, very strongly. And that happened not as many singers when they are full of glory and they just don't have the time. No, with me it happened when I was really struggling, and I think I was cleaning floors or toilets in a bar or something. It was a very low point of my life. And so it kind of lingered and still lingers on the back of my mind, to the point that then when I started my career, I started doing dramatic, very difficult repertoire straight away, because that was what that was my mentality. Very few people could do it. So I said, I will do this. Yeah. And but saying it, I will do it, and doing it, that's there is a reach there, you know. So although I was doing it, and I was doing it successfully because companies were employing me, I had that doubt, and finally I hit a company where my conductor didn't like me very much, and all the circumstances were a little bit against me, and I was on the premiere. The premiere is the first night of the production, where the press come, and that's where more pressure is. And I was going to go on, and I created a routine to pray to my dead father, to my dad, and I had a photo of that, and without knowing, I became very needy of that over the first few years of my career. So I had to convince that there was an entity that was protecting me, and I wanted to do it, and I needed to feel that, and I couldn't feel it just before the show, and I was so nervous, and I was, at some point, the spiral went so low that I was convinced that it was going to be a disaster, and I was about to go on into singing, and I just thought to myself, and I talk aloud to myself. I said, okay, that's enough. And I imagined the face of my dad, and I said, listen, I do not need your help. As a matter of fact, I will do it, and I dedicate this to you, and we are quits. So all that happened is gone, and I'm gonna do this for you, and I don't need your help anymore, and I'm gonna go on. And that show was one of the best shows of my life. I had so much energy and so much conviction that it was a massive success. I got so many contracts came on the tail end of that production, because the people said, oh my God, what's he doing? How can he develop this sound and this thing with so much security? And I got so much work out of that. I think it was the beginning of my full solid career, and it came out of that point. That to me was a beginning, an end of insecurity, and a beginning of trust on myself. But it wasn't trust on my abilities. It was a trust that I can decide to trust myself, going into that loop, and that something will happen that will make things work.
That's very, very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And here we come right again to the topic of trust that you already mentioned before. And I trust that you have enjoyed this conversation today. I definitely did, and I can't wait to talk to you more as we meet again in life and as our paths cross again. Just one last question, maybe. In a figurative sense, what makes you lose your voice or get speechless, Maybe just, is there anything that just we can also use breath, takes your breath away at times?
My voice?
Yeah,
me personally?
In a figurative sense, I mean, breathtaking,
okay.
losing your voice, you're speechless in that sense, not literally, but figuratively. What makes you just sometimes feel, if at all, maybe there's nothing?
I try every day. It doesn't happen every day, obviously, but I try every day to live with gratitude, to look at what I have, not what I have achieved, but what I actually have, the love of my wife, my daughter, my friends, my colleagues, the smile of people, the nature, how nature greets me when I walk to. I imagine even not living things like a house to be living and talking to me, and I try to feel grateful of that every day. And sometimes when I meditate enough of that, there is a sense of awe that I get, and that takes me. It lasts. I don't know how long it lasts, a second too, but it's like, oh my God, it's so overwhelmingly beautiful to be able to do, for me, myself, to have all the blessings that I had, and to be able to share them, not only in this format, but with my clients, with the companies that I sing for, with the people that I help. When I meditate and think about it, suddenly there is a sense of awe that comes to me, that is wonderful that all this can be achieved in a lifetime, in a second. And it is very strange, because also at the same time, and is how I grew up, I have a very cynical mind. As I'm saying it, I have a voice inside me that says, "Oh my God, it sounds like da, 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 da." But that voice for that period of time gets quiet, and I feel like, life is good. That to me, that takes the breath away.
And I'm speechless now. I'm at a loss of words. Life is beautiful. Thank you so much for this open conversation and for the trust. And talk to you next time.
See you next time.
Bye, Luis.
Bye.